Welcome to the Curve Weekly, where we read the finance news so you don't have to. I'm Vic Harris. I'm a finance professional and have had a career out of making money for people.
And I'm Sophie Hallwright. I'm an ex-producer. I've worked in radio, television, and the media industry, and I was just really sick and tired of not knowing how to make money or understand anything happening in the economy, so we started this podcast.
We're starting off with a quick update on the war in Iran, where the oil price is at, what markets are doing, and what you should be doing yourself. Nothing.
A 20-year-old American woman has made a claim against all the social media platforms. She's just won a case. She's won millions of dollars. We talk about what this means for social media and the tech industry in general.
We also talk about private credit. It's a space within the investing world that's actually been quietly booming over the last few years, but recently people are starting to get a bit nervous about it, and we talk about why.
And then we really need your help. At the end of this episode, we need a creative brainstorm from our amazing listeners. So please stick around and give us your thoughts, feedback, and bright ideas.
But first of all, we're back in the studio together.
Oh, back in London, Vic.
Back in the studio.
It feels quite good to be in the same space again. I think we've had the amount of technical F-ups behind the scenes. Podcasting remotely is such a pain in everyone's ass, isn't it?
I don't know how the big people do it.
No, neither do I. They must have some kind of weird technical minion that comes in and helps them because it is so hard.
Our technical minion is Emily.
I know, and Emily, we think, God, we're back in the same place. I would like to just start by saying thank you so much to India Leishman, who filled in for me last week. She was amazing.
She was great.
And I loved all the comments of support when people listened and were like, she was great, this was amazing. It's so cool to see people step in. It's like, we're not that special. Anyone can talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's quite fun to have, we're so special.
Don't listen to anyone else. Yeah. We're so special.
No, but I mean, it's just fun to hear other people step in, and she had some really cool insights.
Yes, I think that. I was like, wow, okay, she
really
obviously
researched and made me realise I need to pick my game up.
I know. I was like, wow, you've really taken this seriously.
I know.
I loved it. Yeah, thanks, Indy.
But yeah, I also just thanks for letting me have a holiday.
How was it?
It was so good.
Yeah.
Have you been to Vietnam?
No.
I saw this meme the other day, and it was like when you beg your parents to get you a puppy when you're 6, and then now they're begging you for kids, and you're just floating on a stream in Vietnam. And I was like, oh my God, it's me. It was amazing. I went to this place up in the north called Ha Long Bay. Have you heard of it?
Oh, I've heard of it.
These massive greenstone islands. There's 7,000 of them. You just go around it in a boat, and it honestly looks like you're in Jurassic Park or something. It was incredible. And we spent 2 days on this boat cruise, which at first I thought how embarrassing. We're 34 and going on a cruise. What is the clientele going to be? But it was so fun. There was this bath in our room, so you could be in a bath and read, and just all these insane islands going past. It was quite unreal.
Nice.
And actually really great to do a holiday where you actually cannot work. The second part of the trip, we were on motorbikes, going around this loop in northern Vietnam.
Cool.
And it was purposefully planned so that I couldn't be on the back of my bike trying to send an email. Yeah. But no, it was so much fun. Had the best time.
Nice.
I'm quite scared to check my bank account, if I'm being totally honest with you. Our social media manager, Lucy, sends a weekly email being how's everyone going? Are you in the green or the red this week? And I'm like, can I avoid this week?
Oh, I know. It comes around every week. I'm like,
I had a total F out.
Red.
I got to the
red.
No, I got to the airport, Vic, and we checked in, and they were like, beep, beep, don't go, you can't go through. We need to take your boarding pass and your pass. And I was like, oh, for God's sake. I'm just, here we go again. What have I done this time? And I was like, no, I'm feeling confident. This is all fine. And then they came back and they were like, you can go through now. And I was like, oh, thank God. And I just thought it was because we had digital boarding passes and they gave us physical ones. Yeah. They were like, no, you need to go and see the check-in desk as soon as you get in. I was like, shit. And then I had a small part of the back of my mind where I was like, maybe I'm getting an upgrade. It was the sake of
customs. The custom officer? Yes, you're getting upgrades, Sophie, all right?
Well, I've never been upgraded, so I thought maybe it was a positive. Anyway, so I went up to the desk, and she was like, do you have your visa for Vietnam? And I was like,
no.
What? And I turned to my boyfriend and I was like, did you?
I
was like,
have fun without me.
He was like, no, we don't need visas. I checked. And he was like, oh my God, I only checked UK. And not New Zealanders. So they were like, the flight leaves and, you're about to board. So they were like, just try and see if you can get a last minute one. I was like, this is not happening. This is not happening. And then they were like, sometimes you can pay to get a fast track visa. So sat down furiously looking. There was like 15-minute visa application. I was like, this is totally a scam. Like I bet you anything this is not going to work. Anyway, paid $350 USD, thinking this is probably going to some random's inbox and I'm never going to get an email from this. Anyway, it worked. Got my visa. The boarding had been delayed, so I managed to like get on. But I was just like, this is for my emergency fund, right? Like this is a valid emergency.
No comment.
You don't reckon?
Nah.
Oh my God. Well, where is that meant to come from?
Your travel fund.
I'd spent that on my flight.
No, I think, yeah.
Come on, give me a break. I never spend my emergency fund. Oh my God, she's not letting it pass. That's devastating. Anyway, point is, I'm in the red. So red. Swimming in red.
No, bless. On my flight over, as I was getting off and I went via Vancouver, bless the hostess, she was like, Vic, oh my gosh, I didn't know that you were on this flight. Oh my gosh.
Oh, stop.
And she was like,
Cute.
damn it, I wish I'd known. And I was like, yeah, I wish I had too. I would have got an upgrade. No, but she was so sweet. She was like really gutted. Oh. And I was like, oh.
Was this an
you're like, everyone's trying to get out behind you and you're like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, see you. Like, it was, she was very sweet.
That's
so
so
shout
nice.
out to her. Shout out to New Zealand. Yeah.
I had a moment on the flight back where I was sitting in my seat with my retainer in and my earplugs falling out. It was not my finest moment. And someone was walking past and she goes, I love the podcast, and then kept walking.
Yeah.
And I just like had this like retainer and I was like, thank you. Like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed that this is like how you're seeing me.
I know. God. Also, our flight was delayed like 3 hours. I was like, imagine if I'd gone full angry mode and been like, this is ridiculous, you know.
You kind of can't anymore.
Yeah. Do you remember when we had that office in Auckland and City Works Depot? We worked out of my sister's office and I refused to pay for parking.
Oh my God.
And I was like, it's private property. You can't charge. I was just making shit up anyway.
Yeah,
maybe
it's one of those things you have to be careful of now. I feel like.
And then they like red stickered my car in terms of not literally.
Didn't they put like a clamp on the wheel?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
I
feel like that's the kind of thing that would happen to me,
like,
not
also,
you.
why, Vic, it's a business. Just pay. Like, why do you think you're special? Like, Auckland is the worst as well. There's terrible parking. And then, like, even in the city, like, I had so many meetings in the city and spent a fortune on parking. Like, there was one, it was $50 for a few hours. And then I was half an hour over and I got stung another 70. So this one meeting cost me, like, $130. And I was just like, oh, kill me now.
I must say that's the best thing about London is the public transport. Like to be able to not have to deal with parking. Yes, line bikes drive me absolutely insane. However,
it's quite a nice way to get around, you know, fresh air.
Oh, I'm just like the app is constantly wigging out and it makes me so mad. I got my jacket caught in the wheel the other day on the way to work and I turned up being like, hi guys, and I had dust, like black shit all over my hands. I washed them like 10 times and it wouldn't come off because my jacket just got sucked on in. And then people biking past being like, sucks when that happens. Been there. And I'm like, can someone fucking help me? I just feel like any disaster it's with a lime is happening to me.
Speaking of not driving.
Yes.
There is, I think we're gonna get to a point where,
I know what you want to say.
Yeah, the oil price, like when I left New Zealand, it was like, we're down to, I can't remember how many weeks, but anyway, they're down to like a weekly countdown until we're having to start putting things in place to stop using cars and using petrol. The UK is so reliant on oil.
I think I feel good about this, the idea of rationing oil and not having people not using cars. I'm like, why have we not done this sooner to slow down global warming?
But it's not just that, right? If you think of like old people in their houses that can't use heating, you know, like that's the kind of shit that really is really sad.
But if you had someone planning better in terms of its use of oil, an elderly person in their home using heating is top priority, but everyone being lazy and just having a car and driving with one person in it probably shouldn't be priority. Don't you think? Like, don't you think this actually could be planned to it actually, you know, in the same way that COVID...
I think it'll get to that point. It'll get to that point where it's like, okay, you can't drive with just one person or you can't drive on Mondays.
But that's great.
Yeah.
Is that me being, like, ignorant?
I think it's more a bigger issue of, like, how in the world is the fact that a war in the Middle East can impact the rest of the world. Why are we so reliant on oil?
But, you know, in the same way when COVID happened and everyone stopped traveling and stopped this and that, and we saw amazing impacts on climate change. And then also all the things that came out of it was the idea of like people can be very like self-sufficient working from home and all these things that should have happened sooner didn't, but because we were forced into it, what came out of it was kind of positive in a way. I know that this is not ideal, but if we actually got to a place where every country was being really clever about rationing the amount of oil that was used, and it wasn't the go-to and it wasn't just readily available all the time, wouldn't that be good?
In theory, yes. In the short term, if we're rationing our oil and not driving, that means more people on public transport, more people using line bikes. There's just not the infrastructure to take all those people in the short term. But yes, and I said this on last week's with India, I was like, I think the positive outcome of all of this is we need to diversify. We need to be more focused on renewable energy. Like all that kind of stuff I think will be positive, but that's not, you can't do that overnight.
But I also feel like you've said that for years where you're like, all these impacts will mean that there's more demand on solar energy and there's more demands on natural blah, blah, blah. But then it never really happened, It sort of did, but I feel like it always comes to a head with some massive issue that the whole world has to stop for it to actually force change to happen faster. So in a way...
But if you think of COVID, right, your example with COVID, yes, it was great, everyone can work from home. Yes, that was good, but that led to massive inflation. We had, because the system wasn't set up for it, wasn't set up for this global movement of everyone needing a laptop, for example, or everyone, nobody using cars so we can shut down certain factories, or all of that stuff. It wasn't prepared for it. So yes, this could be the thing that tips it over the edge in terms of like, okay, we need to do more renewable energy and all of that. But it could go the other way and realize, okay, we actually need to be drilling for oil in more countries in the Middle East, because we can't rely on the Middle East because it's so volatile, and there could be another war that breaks out. So we need to look at Australia, we need to look at the US, we need to look at Argentina, Venezuela. No, it was Venezuela, sorry, not Argentina. But one thing is, and I know you're like, inflation.
Diversify. Is that where you're going?
If this does lead to inflation, the way we combat inflation is higher interest rates to slow down people spending money. But like if we have high inflation, this is case in point of why we need to be investing, because your money is literally getting eaten away if it's in the bank. So like if anything, there should be a trigger of, gosh, I need to invest my money. It needs to be growing because the world's getting more expensive. Everything's getting more expensive. I need to grow my money in order to stand still.
What would you say to people who have taken their money out of a lot of investments because they feel quite concerned about what's happening in America and I've had quite a few people speak to me about the idea, and this is people actually with a decent amount of money. They've pulled so much of their money out of investments because they feel like they're too risky. How would you respond to that? Because
I'd be like, well, when are you going to put it back in? What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the stock market to fall 10%, 20%? Are you waiting for the war to be over and then, there's just no strategy. Not even the best investors haven't timed the market well or done well out of trying to time the market. So why do you think that you can? The market's already down. Markets all around the world are already down 5, 7, 8%. You should be investing.
Yeah.
If you're investing I guess people are nervous, but there's always going to be something. There's always going to be something around the corner that makes you nervous. We've had COVID. We've had cost of living. We've had tariffs. We've had
at this point,
oil.
It's comical, isn't it?
Totally. Like why stress yourself out being like trying to time the market by, selling and buying, and just sit and forget. Because I guarantee we will be sitting here in a year's time with something else that's affecting the stock market. And look, if it falls 10, 15% tomorrow, cool. Go shopping. The US is down about 5%, probably change by the time this podcast comes out. New Zealand's down 5%. Australia's down 7%. UK, which is the most reliant on energy from the Middle East, is down 8%. There's Asian stock markets around the world which are down way more than that. The more reliant you are on oil from the Middle East, the more your stock market is down, essentially. And remember, stock markets are forward-looking. So as soon as there is a slight positive announcement of the war being over or the Strait of Hormuz opening up and oil being back, by the time you invest, you've missed it. You just need to, Trump is he's not going to let the stock market fall. He is so invested in it doing well. And it is kind of the flagship thing that presidents hold their hat on in their term in government is this is how the S&P 500 is done in my tenure. So
I didn't realise that. Like I didn't
he
realise.
is so egotistical. He will be, and
He
he's
will
got
wanna
wealth
fly-
tied up.
yeah.
Yeah, he's not going to let us have a major, and look, admittedly, some of it is out of his control, but there's kind of pluses of him being in power as well. It's like investing alongside a founder, right? If he's invested in the stock market and he's got a lot of wealth tied into the S&P 500 doing well, maybe we just invest alongside him.
Yeah. Thank God there's some positives. I think it's really interesting because when it's nearly been a year since the tariffs happened.
Yeah.
And the markets did its first massive holy shit and it dropped and it was like this massive moment. At the time when we were talking about that, I think I had this perspective of Trump has no idea what he's doing. What an idiot. And I mean no idea what he's doing in regards to kind of everything. But if there's one thing that he has kind of proven in the last year, I'm not saying I agree with any of his decisions or the way that he thinks about the world, but like if you look at the stock market,
Oh, totally.
I mean, it's not exactly done badly. I hate to say that, but I guess the way to think about it is if his main incentive is money and America's money, you probably assume that if he sees things totally falling off a cliff, he's going to do something to try and rectify it, which is such a weird thing to say. Kind of hate that, but it is the truth.
You know, he's the puppeteer and we're the puppets.
It's just so weird how he knows how much it impacts. And I was actually reading something, you know how we've been talking about those sort of like market voting. What are they called? Is it going to be sunny today? I'm putting $50
prediction
on
markets.
Prediction markets. And, you know, we spoke about the tariffs and all these businesses starting to claim refunds for the impacts that it had on their business. And then there was also all the stuff around Trump and, you know, trading with sort of like insider information or whatever, and people around Trump making money. Apparently the same thing. They're starting to look at all these in the sort of like whatever the betting market's called. I can't remember what it's called. Prediction market. There was 150 people who voted the day before that the Iran war happened, and they made a lot of money on it. And there's all these investigations happening around.
Yeah.
You know, like what?
Well, that's why that was one of the key things is like you can kind of manipulate the prediction if you know some inside information. That's the thing with when you're investing in the stock market, there are such strict rules around trading on inside information. If the information is not given to everyone and made public, you cannot trade on it. And that's why there's like reporting seasons, because there's kind of closed off periods from when people at that company can sell shares before. You know, like if, say, for the Curve, we've got year end this week, financial year end, if we were a public company, we wouldn't be able to sell or buy shares.
For a period of time.
There's set times when you can buy and sell as an insider in the business, and it's usually just after financial results have been released, so you're on the same playing field as everyone else, right? Otherwise, if I was the CFO, I'd be like, oh, this is going to be good. I'll just buy some shares. And then you release the result and the share price goes up and you're like, woohoo. You know, like back in the day, you used to be able to do that. And
wild.
I know. Like
God,
when the stock market.
In the Wild West.
Yeah, like back in the day when the stock market was fairly new. Quite fun.
Quite fun. Great time to be in the stock market.
Totally.
And I'm telling you, put $100 in this business.
Imagine if it was just still wild like that.
So fun. You know how when we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, the prediction markets, we put something like a poll in the podcast, like you could vote. Do you think that these prediction markets are gambling or investing? You know how you're kind of unsure? 100% of people said it was gambling. And Vic's not convinced. I was listening to...
No, I'm like, I'm kind of on the fence. So it's so interesting, right? Because I agree, but then I also disagree with myself. I don't know.
I was listening to the Shameless episode a week ago, and they were talking about in relation to the manosphere and the documentary by Louis Theroux and essentially how the prediction market is playing into all these young men that are trying to not work the 9 to 5 and provide and, you know, all that toxic shit. If haven't watched the doco, definitely do. But the idea that all the language, all the marketing, everything that they're doing with prediction markets is to try and position it like trades, so that all these like young
Or like
idiots in the
Tesla.
manosphere can feel like they're finance bros.
Yeah.
And I just, when they were talking about it, I was like, oh my God, that's so true.
There's an element of gambling, but there's also an element of investing. So
I just
it's
think
kind of
when I heard the
like if
shameless
you
skills.
hang on, I've got it.
Oh God.
So if you are an analyst of Tesla and you had been analyzing it for years, you knew it inside out, you knew their announcement for their, their next quarter deliveries were coming out, which moves the stock price, and you had done a ton of research and realized it was actually going to be above what the market expects. You buy shares, you put money in the prediction market. Both get a payoff. Yes, one's investing in the company, one's investing on another platform. Both get a return, both get a payoff if you're right.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think the interesting part is they're really gamifying it to encourage unhealthy amounts of trading. So the way that the user experience and the language and the marketing is all encouraging. I think that people aren't going to prediction markets with all this research, having done all this stuff and then putting money in a really educated way. It's encouraging gambling-like behaviour.
Yes, definitely.
Which is not great.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying from like a technical standpoint. What's the difference?
And it's also, if it gets quite big, if I was going to invest in Tesla and then I was like, actually, I might just see what the prediction markets are predicting is going to be. Do you know what I mean? Like not using it in putting my money in the prediction market, but using it as a source of research.
Even us asking the community, do you think this is gambling or not, is so interesting to me that 100% of people said yes, because it makes me think if there's that many smart people who are voting that.
And using it,
Well, no, more just like if they're the ones voting it's gambling, it kind of reinforces the idea to me that even though we're unsure, there's all these other opinions that we can take into account and realise that most people think it's gambling, so maybe it would be. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think when you have lots of opinions on mass, especially
we should have done that on Kalishi, on the prediction market. Is this gambling?
No, we did. That's exactly what we're talking about.
No, like we should have set up an account and done it in there and made some money off everyone. Well, made money off our community. Thank you, guys. No, just joking.
Spot the investor.
Yeah.
Or gambler, you choose.
yeah. Or gambler. No, it's interesting to see. I feel like with all these new platforms, like even with when Bitcoin first came out, everyone's like, oh my gosh, and then it gets regulated, and like there's
That's
restrictions.
actually a good example though, because a lot of people when Bitcoin came out were like, it's gambling, because it was new and different and weird, and people didn't understand it.
Yeah, but I think when something new and exciting starts to get traction, that's when the regulation in each country looks at it and is like, oh, actually, this is not good. This is, or what are the risks or the repercussions, and then they decide essentially if it's gambling or investing. We've also had some news out, speaking of damage to people.
Could you sound less excited about that title?
Was a shit segue.
This is a massive story that's just breaking at the moment. How do you even explain it? Okay, let's backtrack and talk about tobacco and what happened in like the 80s and 90s and how this has been compared to the start of what unraveled with regards to that. Because I think that's a really good example. Like people were smoking. It was this whole like big, fun, cool thing for ages. And then all of a sudden people started making claims against tobacco that it was really detrimental for people's health.
Yeah.
Heaps of people were claiming about lung cancer and all different types of things. And obviously now you look at, a pack of cigarettes and there's all sorts of warning signs, right? It's
you can't advertise on billboards anymore, and you can't. Like there used to be magazine covers with like pregnant women smoking, which is just wild. But see, that's wild now. But back in the day, we'd be like, oh.
It was basically like an unregulated thing that people thought was cool. Now you pick up a packet and there's like rotting teeth and dying babies. It's absolutely horrendous. But essentially what has happened is all these people complained and had lawsuits against tobacco companies. And what's happened now, which we've talked about for ages, the idea that social media is really damaging for people's mental health. We've talked about it kind of on the peripheries for years, but there's been this first case where someone's actually been reimbursed for the damage that social media had on them. So let's just discuss the case and what happened and then what we think the flow-on effects might be. So
she was 6 when she started using YouTube and 9 when she started using Instagram, so very, very young, and she has won a case in the US arguing that it damaged her mental health, like just being able to scroll infinitely, autoplay on from like one thing in YouTube to the next thing, notifications, all of that just got her absolutely hooked, and it led to anxiety, depression, so many things. And she has, won a case in the US, absolutely major, that Meta and YouTube are liable for her addiction, essentially, and harming her mental health, which kind of goes with everything that's happening around the world of social media being banned for under 16s. Like in Australia, end of last year, there was a ban on social media for under 16-year-olds. There's a movement in New Zealand at the moment, B416, that's trying to do exactly the same. Indonesia as well has just come out banning social media for under 16. So there's like so much going on. And interestingly, I tried to find some stats around the impact that stopping 16-year-olds from using social media would have on social media players like Meta and Google.
Do you mean financially? Like if they weren't a part of their customer base?
They just don't disclose it.
Wow.
Which is fair. Like they're not allowed to be targeting, but this is saying that they have been. And if you read that Careless People book by Sarah Williams, she used to work there. She was a Kiwi. She used to work at Meta.
Oh, I remember you've spoken about this.
It is wild what goes on behind the scenes at Meta. She worked at Meta in terms of them saying they don't target under 16s, but they do, and just the smoke and mirrors around it. And
it's so off from a moral standpoint.
But also, it might not be financially, impactful for these social media players, if all of a sudden they can't target under 16-year-olds. But like any brand, if you think about a bank, getting young people in early,
it's an investment, right?
Brand loyalty. It might not be financially viable, in those first few years or whatever, but they build the brand loyalty, they know how to use the customer interface, whatever it is, and they stick around. And so
they're almost priming their future customer base, and they're getting them attached and addicted so that they can monetize them. But I think the really interesting thing here is, am I right in saying that Snapchat or Snap and TikTok paid her in private, so they kind of settled, but then Meta and YouTube didn't, and now they've had to pay her as well. And I mean, how much? Am I right? This was like millions of dollars that she got in compensation.
And also, I don't think it's the monetary. It's kind of what it stands for. Like this just now opens up for so many, when you have a first case like this, or you use a case as an example, it sets a standard, like this just opens the door for not only other countries to follow suit and bring cases against these social media players, but also other people in the US to come forward and be like, hang on.
I think the interesting thing about this whole case is the idea that up until now, we've kind of flippantly talked about being addicted to our phone or being addicted to this. And, remember like a couple of years ago, and there was all those campaigns being like, look up, like, what are you missing by being so engrossed in your phone? But it's not really been taken as a serious thing to be addicted to your phone, because we all are. There hasn't been up until this point any responsibility taken or any protective mechanisms, and actually they're constantly competing for our attention spans. Like Netflix CEOs talk about the idea that their biggest competitor is sleep. Like that's actually people's well-being. So I think that in a way this is positive. Firstly, definitely. I'm so impressed that this woman is 20 and brought this as a case. How amazing. She obviously looked around and saw herself and all of her friends and people younger than her so negatively impacted by social media that she was like, I want to make a change, which at 20 is so admirable. But I just think that similar to what you said before about regulations on betting markets coming into play because something's come to light. Hopefully what this will do is put parameters in place where it's protecting people more, so that it's not just exploiting for money from a tech platform perspective. Because I think we kind of laugh off being addicted to our phones, but if you think 20 years ago, the amount of time that we would have back if we weren't on social media, or I don't know. I
think social media. I think phones. I think it is social media that is damaging. But I think I read the news on my phone, that's me staying informed. I guess it's if I look at her, why is she on social media at 6 and 9?
But I don't and I know that you can say that's a parent's responsibility, but I actually just don't think that's true.
No, I think there is an element of it, but I do think that they have to take, that they as in the social media players have to take responsibility, because it's the algorithm as well, right? It's feeding them what they're looking at, and like when
It's
you're
so-
young, when you're a young girl, like gosh, everything about like, you know, what I eat in a day and like all that kind of shit is just like so bad.
I don't know. I think the reason I'm bringing up the phone thing is I was reading an article today on the Financial Times. Can I just get a bit of a like pat on the back? In 2023, there's this like little seaside town in Ireland who there's about 20,000 people that live there, and basically they came together as a community and decided they didn't want the young kids to be obsessed with phones. Essentially, all 6 of the primary schools band together and basically told parents, like, please don't buy kids phones until they're 16. And the increase in like happiness and kids being able to be kids, it's kind of amazing what they've done. And I just think that when you see, there was all these quotes in the article from these young kids talking about how they didn't want phones. Why would they and I just think that the change has to be systemic, because if 5 people have a phone and then there's one kid that's left out,
They won't
do you know
want
what I
to.
mean? Like
Yeah,
it's kind of a
totally.
community-led thing. Like if everyone didn't have phones or everyone didn't have social media before they were 16, that's the norm. And I think that the more that we can put protections in place for phones and social media as just community level safety, whatever, I think the flow-on impacts will be quite amazing for young people.
Yeah.
If anyone actually is interested in the before 16, it's the New Zealand initiative that they're trying to ban it in New Zealand. We'll link the petition in the podcast show notes, because it's being led actually by one of our investors is one of the people on the campaign, and it's a really cool initiative. So if anyone's interested.
So there has been a bit of movement in the beauty space. Sophie and I went to a talk a month or so ago now, and I think we've spoken about this on the podcast. We really want to get her on, but gosh, what was her name? Victoria something. I just remember she was called Victoria.
Oh my God, what is her name? Mulligan?
Yeah, yeah. And she is called the futurist. Anyway, she looks at big trends that are going on in the world and, you know, demographically, society, like all of that. And one of them was, yes, we're living for longer, but we're not living for longer. Yes, literally we are living for longer, you know, but we're not living longer at the end of our lives. We're wanting to extend the middle. And it was all about what that means from a financial standpoint.
Do you mean extend the middle in terms of the quality of life in between?
Yeah. So like everyone's, you know, fitter, healthier, living longer. So it's not, you know, an extra 20 years when we're feeling 90, it's kind of an extra 20 years when we're feeling 30, or, you know, we might be 40, but we feel 30, that kind of thing. And she was like, yes, from a financial impact, you know, what does that mean in terms of financial planning? But then it was also, I was sitting there going, oh my goodness, so right. Like everything that we're seeing in the health and wellness space at the moment around, you know, all these kind of gyms that focus on, you know, not just working out, but more like health and wellness, but more holistic. You know, you've got people focusing on vitamins and just like really, like it's huge, right?
It's like health maxing.
Yeah, it's like all the peptides, like everything. It's like, how can I be fitter, stronger, healthier for longer? And part of that is in the beauty space. There is just so much going on in terms of new brands, acquisitions. I mean, we had Alex Earle launch a new beauty brand. We've got Estee Lauder here, which is now trying to buy this big Spanish beauty company. They've got the owner of Byredo, you know that.
Oh yes! Oh my God, I love Byredo.
That Barbara Sturm. Like, there's a lot of brands in there. Yeah, they're just trying to focus on this whole beauty and wellness space. And we spoke about Unilever last week, who's trying to get rid of their food division and focus on the beauty and wellness.
Can I just, before we get into this, I just want to say, you know, I am shocked that there is still so much demand in this space.
Yeah.
Like, we spoke about Hailey Bieber selling her skincare road for $1 billion. You see celebrities like Dua Lipa launching, is it Augustine Bader collabs. I feel like you look everywhere and there is a new celebrity skincare brand. It's almost like every single celebrity has a skincare brand. Yeah. How on earth is there still that much demand? Like, there is 500,000 skin masks that you could use already. And I was like, I can't understand how they all survive. Like, they can't. Is there enough demand for all of them to be successful? Because it just feels like overload.
Well, if you think of like the billions of women that want to extend that period and want to stay looking youthful or whatever for that period of time, you know, they may have been in that space for like 10 years and now it's 30 years. You know, you've just 3x your addressable market. And I'm pulling these kind of figures out, but you know what I mean. It's like, and you've got young women coming in, and you've got older women not leaving. This gap in their age that they want to.
So it's like 18-year-olds to like 70-year-olds are now investing in skincare, whereas it used to be maybe a 15, 20-year age.
Yeah. So there is, and there's also when there's demand, like with any industry, when there's demand, everyone wants to get on board.
I'm just bored of it. I'm so bored of being
marketed. I'm just like, just tell me which one to take and do. And like, you know, it's like, don't give me 10 different face masks. Just tell me the best one.
I know. By the way, the best one is Biodance.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
I rate that.
I put it on the plane last night.
Oh my God, I did that too.
I just find I don't really sleep that well on them though.
No.
They're just
also, it's so embarrassing. Like I got up to go to the loo and I looked like a scary ghost. And I was like walking down the aisle with my hair over my face trying to be like, don't look at me, I'm really embarrassed. But I went to a event a couple of nights ago and I sat next to this woman who has started an AI business where she's basically
I've met her. And they like recommend. It's almost it's incredible. Yeah.
Oh my God, how weird is that?
I know.
It's basically it goes on to say Cult Beauty or different beauty websites. So it might be Chemist Warehouse or whatever, where there's an overwhelming amount of products, and you might say, I'm 34, my skin has acne, I want to spend $100, and it recommends the best products. And I just thought, thank God, because I am so fucking overwhelmed by products. It's not funny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gen Z is 40% of the global beauty consumers in the world. Like, that is wild.
Is that kind of sad? Like
40% of them, about the same percent, 40% discover their brands on social media. So here we are saying social media is bad. I mean, it's kind of all in one conversation, right? They're looking at probably beautiful women on social media and like, use this. I mean, if I think of what I've bought in terms of skincare in the last 12 months, guilty, it's from social media.
I just honestly, if I get one more ad that keeps spamming me, it's this like stick that looks like Vaseline, and they're like, I can't believe I didn't know about this, and like I just put it around my lips and it's like, oh my God, and it's like honestly the most ridiculous ads. And I'm honestly this close to screenshotting and being like, do you think we're that stupid? Like, I know for a fact that just is like the most shit product ever. I mean, granted, I actually did buy a product like that once, so maybe that's why I'm being spammed. But I'm just like, I'm this close to throwing my phone in a canal. I'm so off it.
I guess like...
Sorry, bring it back. I'm feeling annoyed.
Is like, this is an investing trend. I think this is going to be around for a very long time, the health and wellness. And then like a subset of that, I think, is kind of technical beauty, you know, like all the little technologies. Like we've spoken about this before. This is kind of a space that I'm interested in terms of investing in.
I wanted to ask you about something. I am quite proud to say that this week is the first week that I've decided I want to bring a bit more to the table with the Curve Weekly. I want to try and not just be sitting here like some goldfish that's absorbing your brain. I want to try and actually bring some more interesting stories. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about that I didn't understand, but I've seen spoken about, is this whole private credit thing that people, and I heard an article, or I can't even remember where I saw it, but all these people are freaking out about the idea that people are taking money out of funds. And it was something about liquidity, and then it means the fund falls because then they divest from their best investments. Anyway, I didn't really understand why it was a problem if this continues. Can you just explain it, please? Maybe it's not that interesting, but I was like, oh, I want to know.
Private credit, yes. So as the name suggests, this is when credit is effectively loaning someone some money. So if you go to the bank and you can't get a loan, you go to someone or, you know, an investment fund or investment manager and go, hey, can you lend me this money? So credit is just, I'm going to lend you 100,000, you're going to pay me back in whatever 12 months, 4 years, and pay me interest. So it's just like a loan,
but from a not traditional source. So it's basically not from a bank.
Yeah. So there's been this whole wave since the global financial crisis, like years ago. There was a real like crackdown on banks lending money, and because they were just lending like willy-nilly. And so there's been a big crackdown that is like, you know what, you have to be, you know, of X credit rating and, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like
there's like hoops to jump through to get money is harder, basically.
Much harder, yeah. And it's only getting harder. And people are looking at alternative ways to get money. And one kind of industry that's grown a lot in the last, I'd say 10 years is this private credit space where you go to a non-bank to get a loan essentially for anything you want to do.
It's so weird because I do think as soon as people say, oh, like go to this lending company, for example, if it was for a you couldn't get a loan from a bank from a mortgage, or perhaps I don't know. To me, it sounds really spammy. And I don't know if that's like an overhang of something, but the idea of private lending to me sounds kind of dodgy. And is that the case, or is it actually that it was born out of necessity because lots of people who legitimately need money couldn't get it? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's like, it would be like if the Curve wanted to borrow money to do something, and we go to the bank and they're like, oh, actually you're a startup, you're a bit risky, you don't have a lot of assets, so you can borrow from us, but it's going to be 24% interest. You'd be like, oh, screw that.
Right.
So then you might go to somewhere else and it's like, actually, we don't actually have as strict rules as banks. We can do it for 15%. Or it could be the other way, right? It could be the bank will say no, and then you go to a non-bank lender and it's like, it's actually 25%, but you're so desperate, you're like, okay, I just need the money. Like there's a lot of...
So the idea is that you can get the money, it's just probably a higher interest rate because it's more risky for whoever you're borrowing money from to lend it to you.
Yeah, not necessarily as well. It might just be that the banks don't lend to you for whatever reason, but it's usually quicker as well. Banks take forever. Yeah, so there's a bit more human element, I guess. There's a bit more flexibility because these are the people that are lending the money, usually investment funds. So usually, a fund might invest in the stock market and they're trying to get a 10% return per year. Whereas they might be like, oh, actually, we can lend money to the Curve and they're going to pay us 12% interest a year. That's actually a really great return. Oh, and if we do the Curve and then we also do the Swerve over here, they're going to pay us, they're a bit more risky, they're going to pay us 20%. Awesome. We've got an average of 18% return on our fund. So now there's these funds that are coming being like, they still vet you and they still check, but they've actually started to generate some really good returns.
Amazing.
From lending to these companies that are not getting loans from the bank. So, but this is the thing, like it's all well and good when things are going well. And we opened this podcast by saying, the war in Iran and the stock markets are falling and things are getting a bit precarious. There might be inflation, there might be rising interest rates. This has kind of led to a lot of murmurs in the private credit space of, remember, these are companies that
are more risky.
Yeah, slightly more risky. And we're starting to see them default on their loans. We're starting to see like a few things happen that could have major repercussions for the financial system. But because whenever there's like so if we think about the global financial crisis, that was mortgages, the downfall of that was mortgages that were being lent to people that could not pay them back. So, and they're called these subprime mortgages, which means I lend to you and then you lend to someone else. It's like this domino effect. So if you can't pay at the top, we're not getting paid at the bottom. And so it was like this whole unraveling, and people are saying this private credit is kind of a newish thing. It's only been around, people loaning money has been around forever, but like as an investable space has really come into its heyday in the last kind of 10 years. And so people are like, hang on, we don't know how this is going to, if companies do start defaulting, what does that mean for everything else? Like what are the flow-on effects essentially? So this is like people are a bit like, ooh.
So they think that basically what happened with the global financial crisis with all of the unwinding when people couldn't pay their mortgages, they're worried that private credit is going to have the same kind of like tumble down.
Well, a lot of the loans that have been lent out are to kind of AI tech software businesses. And what we're seeing at the moment is, particularly in software businesses, people are realizing AI companies can do what software companies have sold us for so many years, like these big kind of SaaS models, software as a service, you're now being able to create yourself with AI. So it's kind of unraveling all these valuations
so they might not be profitable, which means they might not be able to pay their loans back, which means that this whole investable asset class could come tumbling down. Because what I heard was the idea that there's all these investors in private credit that are wanting to pull their money out. Yes. Which is what's happening at the moment, right?
Yes. So when you have a private credit fund, everyone's slightly different, but say you get a whole lot of investors on board and you manage to raise $100 million in this fund from people that are like, yep, cool, we want to put our money into that fund, and then you can lend it out. So they put the money in the fund, and then there's an investment manager that then lends that money out to lots of different companies and gets the return on that. That you've now got investors in that fund going, things are looking very precarious, I want to take my money out. And you're like, well, hang on, we've lent it out over here, so we don't actually have the money. So it's my God. This whole thing. Yeah. And look, these investment managers aren't stupid. Like, they know there's a certain, you've got to keep a pool of money set aside for people to take out if they want and all of that. But it is, when you start seeing a sector or, a part of the market starting to get
scared, really,
or starting to unravel a bit, like the tech companies and AI looking a bit shaky, like that does send some nervousness. And what you don't want happen,
everyone to pull their money out.
Everyone to be like, to get fearful and pull their money, and then the whole thing unravels. And it's like back in the day when you'd have run on the banks, like when people were scared about inflation, they would go and withdraw all their money from the bank, or if they're worried about the banks collapsing, you'd go and withdraw all your money to the point that they had to like close banks, close ATMs, because
the banks have lent money to other people.
Totally, there's
so
a balancing, right? There's a pool in the middle that they kind of keep for small withdrawals and stuff. But if it's like a seesaw. If there's too many people wanting to take their money out on one side, you have to get it back from the people on the other side.
Oh my God, it's like, just all a bank is one interconnected, isn't it?
A bank's kind of one big credit fund.
Yeah, wow.
And when you have too many people wanting to take their money out, it just throws everything out of kilter, and that's when financial systems break. So there's two really large private credit funds in the US that have actually stopped people from taking money out. So
that's a sign.
Well, it's also like, it's kind of like when like China closed its stock market. Like I remember back in the day, it closed. The stock market was in free fall, and it just closed the stock market, and we're like, people can't get their money out. And when you start to implement measures like that, it creates more fear, because people, as soon as you open again, people are running to the doors to try and get their money out, whether it's a bank, whether it's a stock market, whether it's a private credit fund. So you need to manage it quite carefully.
Because also if you say, sorry, no one can take their money out, everyone's going to panic anyway, and then the whole thing turns upside down.
Yeah, so it's God, but then you leave it open and then it creates more issue. Yeah, it's just like a whole thing. So
I think being the head of anything like that, any kind of massive financial institution, or even if you're pulling the strings of the economy, you're involved in government, like, God, the pressure and amount of things that could go wrong if you slightly tweak something a little bit too far. It's like, it would be an overwhelming
Imagine
amount
if you
of pressure.
sneezed and you accidentally press enter and like put an extra few zeros on something.
God.
And then,
Oh my God, I forgot my cue. Pick up the phone. Hello.
Kia ora, ladies. Love what you do. Thank you so much for putting all the time and energy that you do into the Curve. You're really helping educate such a massive audience. It's amazing. I'm Hannah, a 30-something living in Auckland, and I put in $125 a week into investments, getting that dollar cost averaging. And I've been doing that for about 4 years. I have about 30,000 set aside in investments at the moment. I'm nervous because when I plug my future trajectory into a retirement calculator, it pops out with such a variety of different numbers. And I would love to understand why. Some calculators will say I end up with 500, 600,000, and some over $1 million. They have all been adjusted for inflation, but there's those huge differences just get me so anxious. Like, I'm not doing enough. And $125 a week to me feels quite significant. If I go over that, it'll start impacting my life. And I just want to avoid that. But am I doing enough? I don't know. Can you answer that? Thank you. Love what you do.
Hannah, thank you so much for your call. Lovely to have you on the show.
Listen to the $1 million retirement calculator. No joke.
What's that?
Listen to the $1 million one.
Which one's that?
The one that she said spits out $1 million. I'm like, listen to that.
Right. Sorry, that was a funny. I didn't realise.
Yeah. No, actually, if anything, listen to the more conservative one. Then you'll come out better off. But I think she hit the nail on the head with like
wait, before we get into this, can we just congratulate her? The fact that you've set aside that amount every week and you've got to 30,000 in 4 years is hopefully really inspiring for people that are listening, but also I loved what she said when she was like, I don't know if I could go any higher than that because it's going to impact my life. I'm like, God, you've really done your homework. I'm proud.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I think she hit the nail on the head with the inflation. Like, yes, they're all adjusted for inflation, but they could be using different rates. Like, depends what. Like, I would look at the fine print in that. Also, they could be using different returns as well for the growth of the money and growth of the investment. So some might be using 10%, some might be using 7%, and even though that might, or even 7, one's using 7, one's using 8. Like, that's massive difference over what will be, I don't know,
30 years.
30 years. So that can be massive differences. But I would just always take the most conservative, and then if you're actually at your maximum in terms of that $125 a week, which is incredible, by the way, and I think even if it's showing up that you're going to have $500,000, that's amazing.
But I can understand her anxiety about, okay, well, one's actually manageable and I'm excited by what that looks like it's going to be, and one's absolutely terrifying. Do you think another thing to think about would be, if you look at the returns, was that 7% versus 10, and then look at your investments and where are they? Are there places where you could be a bit riskier and have a higher potential return given you've got so long?
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's also like these calculators, there's so much strictness around them because it's exactly what they don't want you to do, is to be like, oh, cool, I'm going to have $1 million. You know, there's huge caveats. Like this, yes, they might have an average return in there of 10%, but there's going to be years when you don't, and like all of that. Like they can only predict so much. Yeah, it's like taking it with a grain of salt, not relying on it 100%, but realizing, cool, if I get between 800 to $1 million, then that's great, or whatever your number is. But it should be, kind of like, I guess, a baseline.
This whole idea of your kind of retirement or your final number or your enough number or what you're aiming towards, we actually spoke about in an interview with Simran from Friends That Invest, and that comes out in a couple of weeks, and we broke down how she figures out her enough number, and then I did it for myself. So that's out in a few weeks, and I think that if you're listening to this and you're like, oh God, I actually haven't even figured out how much I should have or would have based on where you're at and you're investing, then hopefully that episode will be really helpful.
It's out on Thursday.
Oh, actually, sorry, it's not out in a few weeks. Emily just was like, it's out on Thursday. So that's out this week for anyone that wants to listen.
But I think it's, with investing, it's... I don't know.
There was about to be a real moment of, I could just feel it. You were going something good.
I want to inspire, not
freak people out.
Yeah. And I was going to freak people out.
Why? What were you going to say?
Well, no, it's just like you never know what's going to happen around the corner, right? So it's like, yes, we have these numbers and we have all of this plan, but like it's never going to be perfect. Whether it's a personal issue or the stock market, or like your best defense is building up enough of a buffer that should anything go haywire, you're kind of de-stressed from a financial perspective because you've got this plan in place, but plans never go to plan. So it's kind of this whole, if you're on track for $1 million, awesome, that is great, and hats off to you because that's incredible, and so many people don't have that plan in place, but life can deviate from that plan as well, if that makes sense.
I think maybe what I'm reading between the lines here is you're trying to say, Hannah, you're doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you're investing regularly, you're dollar cost averaging, you're putting as much as you can into the stock market, like you're doing your best.
Yeah. And if it spits out 500, spits out $1 million, like
just try and
you're on the right track.
Yeah, try and think in the back of your head, okay, it would be amazing if the top number is actually what it's going to mean. But I think ultimately maybe the reason that you're querying it is because maybe you could find more and it would give you the answer you want. And if that's not the case, then you just have to know you're doing your best. You put aside as much as you can without impacting your life now, and actually that's amazing. But if you're like, oh shit, I actually in between, like I know I want way more than that, go back to the drawing board with your budget and see if you can invest more. But God, shit, our audience is smart.
Love them.
Oh my
so
God.
Great.
It's just so cool. I feel like the amount of women who are financially savvy and like on their way to changing statistics around how much women have in retirement is insanely cool. Thank you so much though. If anyone's got any things that they want to ask, you can obviously send us a DM or comment on the podcast. But also we do have our Curve Hotline. It's really fun to play voice notes. So if you do want to ask something, let us know. And we actually just wanted to put out a little kind of brainstorm for everyone listening. So in about a month's time, in fact, I'm actually not even going to give too much away here, but we have some exciting things happening with the podcast, and we're wanting to do a bit of a rebrand on what we call the Curve Weekly. And we've been trying to think about different names. We've brainstormed as a team, and we've got the Curve Briefing, the Curve News, the Curve Financial News, the Curve Market Update, the Curve Market Brief, or the Curve Financial Briefing. We're trying to come up with something that is not, basically doesn't have the word weekly in it, because we're hoping to increase the amount that we talk about news. So if you have a really fun idea, can you please comment it where you're listening to this podcast on what maybe we could call it? We'll put the ones we've come up with maybe in the podcast show notes, but either vote on one you like, or if you've got a new idea, we would love to hear it. I think that's it from us for this week.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a great week. Thank you so much for listening to the Curve Weekly. Make sure you hit subscribe or follow wherever you're listening so you're always up to date with the latest finance and investing news.
And feel free to leave a comment to let us know what you thought about this episode, because we would love your feedback.
We've got new Curve Weekly episodes for you to listen to every Monday, but until then, listen to Erasing the Curve. These are our in-depth podcast episodes where we chat about all things money.
We're also around all week on socials if you're hungry for more Curve content, and all the links are in this podcast's show notes. We hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you for the next episode of the Curve Weekly on Monday.
Okay, quickly, the Curve was created to empower and educate you about investing, but we are not financial advisors.
Our platform exists for educational purposes only, and it doesn't provide personalised investing advice for your individual needs and should not be relied upon to make an investment or financial decision.
And always remember to do your own research before making any investment or financial decision.
We're here for any knowledge and support you need, but the final call is always yours.
And thanks for being here.
You got this.
Yeah, we know you got this.